Have you ever imagined disappearing without a trace in the silence of the night, while everyone around you continues sleeping, oblivious to what just happened? Think for a moment, it's exactly midnight, the city plunged into shadows, and suddenly someone simply vanishes. No scream, no sign, just emptiness that leaves behind a trail of questions no one can answer. This is where the story of a disappearance that defies logic begins, one that has spanned decades and remains shrouded in mystery, haunting investigators and curious alike to this day. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover now may surprise you and make you see the night in a new light. The case we're about to explore isn't just another missing person report. It's a deep dive into old police files, forgotten records, and testimonies that, at first glance, seemed trivial, but which hold subtle clues that should never have been ignored. Imagine the frustration of an investigative team that, even with decades of experience, is faced with seemingly insoluble enigmas. Can you feel the tension in those moments? With every page of the report, with every handwritten note, comes the feeling that something is hidden, something that could reveal the whole truth, but insists on remaining out of everyone's reach. The midnight disappearance didn't occur in any ordinary neighborhood, but in a community where everyone knew everyone else, where every face had a story, and every shadow could hide secrets no one dared imagine. The victim, an ordinary person with a seemingly peaceful routine, suddenly finds herself at the center of a case that would become one of the most intriguing enigmas in criminal investigations. It is precisely this abruptly interrupted normality that awakens in us a mixture of fear and curiosity. What happened that night remains unanswered to this day, and it is this gap that gives each detail, each entry in the old files, enormous weight, capable of reigniting theories that many considered closed. As we delve into the records, you'll realize there are layers and layers of information that go unnoticed at first glance. Small details can reveal patterns, unexpected connections, or even point to suspects never considered. The feeling of unraveling a seemingly impossible puzzle is fascinating, and that's exactly what makes mysterious disappearance cases so captivating. Have you ever wondered how investigators manage to piece together theories based on fragments of scattered information, some written decades ago? It's like trying to piece together a mosaic in the dark, and each new clue found in old police files is a small light that partially illuminates the path. And this is where the story begins to get truly intriguing. The files not only record facts, but also contain memories, contradictions, and details that should never be ignored. Each police report, each statement, seems to whisper secrets that only the most attentive can perceive. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover next may change the way you view disappearance investigations, and perhaps even make you question the fine line between what is real and what remains hidden in the shadows of the night. As we progress, you'll realize that each small clue, each old file revisited, brings to light a world of possibilities previously buried beneath oblivion. And it's precisely this tension, this constant search for answers, that keeps us connected to the story, wanting to know more, imagine more, and try to unravel a mystery that refuses to be solved. And it's precisely in this atmosphere of suspense and uncertainty that we'll begin our investigation, exploring every corner, every detail, and leaving that question everyone asks: what really happened that night at midnight? Have you ever stopped to think that someone's life can change completely in a matter of minutes? Imagine a quiet night, like any other, when everything seems to be going on as normal. The streets are silent, a few lights still on in the houses, and everyday routines unfold, almost without us noticing. It's precisely in this seemingly ordinary scenario that a disappearance begins, that still intrigues investigators, curious people, and true crime experts. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you and make you view any quiet night with a new kind of apprehension. The victim of that fateful disappearance lived a simple life, surrounded by friends, family, and the small joys of everyday life. She was someone who frequented the same places, followed her routines, and to those who knew her, there was nothing extraordinary about her life. And perhaps it is precisely this normality that makes the case even more frightening. An ordinary existence abruptly interrupted, leaving a trail of unanswered questions. The midnight disappearance didn't happen in a distant or isolated neighborhood, but in a place where every face was familiar, every story familiar. And it is precisely this proximity that intensifies the mystery and generates an emotional connection with everyone trying to understand what really happened. Think about the small details of that night: the light breeze blowing through the streets, the distant sound of cars passing by on the avenue, the clock ticking away with each minute passing without anyone noticing what was about to happen. The victim went about her daily routine, perhaps unaware that that night would forever mark her life and the lives of everyone around her. Every ordinary gesture, every seemingly trivial decision in that moment became part of an enigma that to this day defies any rational explanation. Can you feel that tension? It's as if each passing second carries an invisible shadow, about to completely erase the presence of someone who seemed secure in her daily life. The sudden disappearance creates a strange feeling, a mixture of disbelief and fear. Friends and family don't understand how something so routine could turn into an endless mystery. The city, which until then had followed its normal rhythm, suddenly finds itself shrouded in suspicion, rumors, and contradictory reports. And this is where the importance of revisiting old records, police files, and the bulletins documenting every detail of what happened before, during, and after that night arises. It is in these documents that overlooked clues often lie hidden, details that could shed light on the mystery that endures to this day. When imagining the victim's life before the disappearance, it's impossible not to empathize. We're talking about someone who had dreams, simple routines, and normal expectations, just like anyone else. And yet, in a single night, everything was abruptly and definitively interrupted. It's this interruption that captivates us, that makes us want to understand every step, every decision, and every element that could have prevented or explained the disappearance. Stay with me until the end, because as we explore the context and details of that night, you'll realize that even the oldest records hold hidden secrets, capable of changing our entire perception of what really happened. As we delve into this scenario, you'll begin to realize that nothing is quite as it seemed. Every street, every corner, every witness interviewed at the time carries fragments of a larger story, and it's precisely this complexity that makes the investigation so captivating. The midnight disappearance isn't just about someone who vanished. It's about how routine can be shattered in an instant, how normalcy can be shattered, and how the shadows of the night hide mysteries that defy any logical explanation. And it's precisely in this atmosphere of suspense and tension that we'll begin to explore the archives and the clues that may reveal what really happened that night. Have you ever wondered how a missing person investigation actually begins? Imagine an ordinary night turning into a case that will challenge police for weeks, months, and even years. That's exactly what happened in the midnight disappearance, a case that became enigmatic from the first minutes authorities were called. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely change the way you view true crime cases and unsolved mysteries. It all began with the first police reports, documents that, at first glance, seemed to detail a common procedure. Neighbors' accounts, emergency calls, investigators' handwritten notes. Each page carried important information, but also inconsistencies that years later still raise more questions than answers. Investigators soon realized they were dealing with something much more complex than a simple disappearance. Small details like conflicting schedules and contradictory witness accounts began to emerge, and each of these gaps became a crucial piece of a puzzle that no one could fully piece together. The police revisited every clue, every statement, and found contradictions that made the investigation even more challenging. One neighbor claimed to have seen the victim leaving the house, while another swore no one had left that night. Old documents showed times that didn't match, and some records even seemed to have mysteriously disappeared from the archives. Stay with me until the end, because as you delve into every detail of these old police files, you'll realize that the truth is often hidden in the most unexpected places, and that every small flaw or omission can be the key to understanding what really happened. What makes this case even more fascinating is how investigators attempted to follow the clues left in the official files. Detailed reports, recorded interviews, and handwritten notes pointed to suspects, possible motives, and even initial theories that, at the time, seemed reasonable. But something always slipped through the cracks. Each new record revisited raised new questions. Who might have had a stake in the disappearance? Why were certain clues ignored? And how could essential details have been missed early in the investigation? The complexity of the case and the lack of clear answers only deepened the mystery, keeping the police on constant alert and all of us curious to uncover the truth. As investigators progressed, suspicions emerged that in many cases were never confirmed. Old police files revealed names that appeared only in preliminary reports, people who were questioned and then dismissed without explanation, and accounts that seemed to contradict everything previously recorded. Each document analyzed was a gateway to new hypotheses, and each new discovery heightened the sense that something much larger was hidden behind this disappearance. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of realizing that no matter how hard you search, some answers always seem to elude you, leaving only the growing tension and the need to understand what really happened that midnight night. And it's precisely in this climate of uncertainty that the initial investigation takes on enormous weight. Every clue lost or overlooked in old police files becomes a puzzle within the mystery itself. Every contradiction in interviews and official reports forces us to question everything we know so far. It's as if the truth is always one step ahead, hidden among yellowed pages and records no one ever thought to revisit. Stay with me until the end, because as we begin to analyze these initial clues, you'll realize that every detail, no matter how small, can be decisive in unraveling what really happened that night, and that often the most complex mysteries begin exactly where the investigation seemed simplest. Have you ever stopped to think that a simple old file can hide secrets, capable of completely changing the course of a case? Imagine a police records folder, forgotten in some dusty corner of the police station, full of notes no one has revisited for decades. Among those yellowed pages are details that were never investigated, clues that were ignored, and even suspects who were never questioned. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely transform the way you view mysterious disappearances and unsolved mysteries. The old police files on the midnight disappearance are much more than simple documents. They hold memories, contradictions, and small clues that at first glance seem insignificant, but when carefully analyzed, reveal layers of information no one had noticed before. Every handwritten note, every forgotten report or lost draft may hold the key to understanding what really happened that night. There's a detail in the files that no one has ever noticed, something so subtle that it went unnoticed by experienced investigators, but which could shed new light on the entire case. As we revisit each page of these records, questions arise that no one has been able to answer. Why were certain witnesses ignored? Why did certain pieces of evidence disappear without explanation? Each of these gaps deepens the mystery and makes us question whether the disappearance truly occurred randomly, or if something or someone was influencing the events. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of realizing there's much more beneath the surface than what police revealed at the time is both fascinating and disturbing. What makes these files even more intriguing is that they not only record facts but also reveal flaws in the investigative process itself. Old documents reveal inconsistencies in timetables, discrepancies in witness accounts, and mentions of suspects who, for some reason, never received proper attention. It's as if each page whispers secrets that, if listened to correctly, could have led to crucial discoveries. Stay with me until the end, because as you delve into these police files, you'll realize that every detail has the potential to rewrite what we know about the midnight disappearance. Furthermore, there are small clues that suggest connections no one explored at the time. A seemingly trivial note might indicate that certain people knew more than they admitted, or that events that seemed isolated were actually linked in unexpected ways. Each revisited file is a new opportunity to unravel these connections, and each forgotten clue makes us question what really happened. It's precisely this sense of mystery and discovery that keeps investigators, and now you, obsessed for answers, trying to fill gaps that have remained hidden for years. As we explore these hidden discoveries, the line between what is known and what remains hidden becomes increasingly blurred. The sense of suspense grows with each detail revealed, and curiosity is fueled by the fact that many elements of the old police files were never discussed in official reports. It's as if we're unearthing a parallel history, a hidden world behind the midnight disappearance, where each piece of information has the potential to completely change the perception of the case. And it's precisely in this climate of tension and mystery that we begin to realize that the old archives not only record facts, but also hide layers of secrets that no one has ever been able to fully decipher. Every overlooked or forgotten detail carries an unseen importance, and that's what makes the investigation even more fascinating. Stay with me until the end, because as we continue exploring these records, you'll discover clues that may challenge everything we thought we knew about the midnight disappearance. Have you ever wondered what really happened the night someone disappeared without a trace? Imagine a situation where every detail is important, yet at the same time seems to contradict itself, creating a tangle of clues that never lead to definitive answers. It's precisely this kind of mystery that makes the midnight disappearance so fascinating and disturbing. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover next may surprise you and make you question everything you thought you knew about true crime investigations and unsolved mysteries. Over the decades, investigators and experts revisited every detail of the case, trying to understand whether it was an accident, a voluntary disappearance, or something much darker, involving people with ulterior motives. Each theory seemed as plausible as it was improbable, and it's in this space between the possible and the impossible that the mystery truly gains momentum. Some investigators believe the case could have been solved if certain clues had been more closely analyzed, if forgotten testimonies had been reviewed, or if small contradictions in old police files had not been overlooked. Among the most discussed hypotheses are accidents that occurred that night, unexpected situations that led the victim to disappear without anyone noticing. On the other hand, there are theories that point to criminal involvement, people with hidden agendas who would benefit from the disappearance. Each of these possibilities is based on old records, witness accounts, and police documents that, even after multiple revisions, still hide secrets that defy logic. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of trying to fit together pieces that never seem to fit together completely, but which can still reveal the truth if observed correctly. What makes these theories even more intriguing is the fact that each hypothesis raises new questions. If it was an accident, how is it possible that no concrete clues have emerged? If there was criminal involvement, who would have the motivation to plan something so silent and effective? Each scenario presented to investigators opens the door to new interpretations. And it is at this point that the public also gets involved, questioning which version makes the most sense, weighing what is probable and what remains impossible to prove. As we explore these hypotheses, details emerge in old police files that challenge initial conclusions. Small, Seemingly inconsequential observations may indicate that certain lines of inquiry were overlooked, that suspects who should have been investigated were never questioned, and the crucial elements may have been overlooked in the heat of the investigation. Stay with me until the end, because as we analyze each forgotten clue and each overlooked detail, you'll realize that the case is far more complex than any initial theory might suggest. It's fascinating to see how the midnight disappearance continues to spark debate among experts, onlookers and researchers, even decades later. Each new analysis of the files, each review of the evidence, and each reconstruction of the night in question opens the door to new interpretations. It's as if the truth is always just around the corner, hidden between the lines of police reports, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond the obvious. And it's precisely at this point of uncertainty, between what could have happened and what remains hidden, that the investigation gains its most intense momentum. Each theory brings up new emotions, new questions, and sparks the curiosity that keeps us connected to cases of mysterious disappearances. What you'll discover next, as you revisit forgotten details and confront the hypotheses raised, could completely change the way you view unsolved mysteries. Have you ever wondered how the disappearance of a single person can completely transform a family's life and shake an entire town? Imagine the shock and confusion that arise when someone vanishes at midnight, leaving no trace, and all the certainties of a community become uncertain overnight. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you and make you experience firsthand the pain, frustration, and lasting impact that mysterious disappearances leave in their wake. For the victim's family, that moment was devastating. Every hour that passed without answers increased the anguish, turning the weight into an almost unbearable torment. The disappearance wasn't just a mystery to be solved. It was an open wound that refused to heal. Parents, siblings, friends, everyone was forced to cope with a sense of helplessness, living with the uncertainty of never knowing if they would see their loved one again. It's hard to imagine the emotional toll of waking up every day with no news, no clues, and with the only certainty that something terrible had happened. Have you ever experienced this, even on a smaller scale, feeling the frustration of having no answers for a situation that should be simple to understand? In the city, the impact was equally profound. Streets that once seemed quiet suddenly filled with rumors, suspicion, and fear. Neighbors wondered who could be behind the disappearance, and every suspicious glance revealed the tension silently building in every corner. The midnight incident became a recurring topic of conversation, local news, and even police records, reminding everyone that, even decades later, certain mysteries remain vivid in the collective memory. The feeling of insecurity and uncertainty permeated every corner, every visit to the police station, every call made in search of answers that never came. Beyond the emotional and social impact, the disappearance had profound consequences for the investigation. Old files show how each missed clue, each ignored suspect, or each contradiction in the accounts altered the course of the investigation. Investigators had to deal with the pressure of an entire community demanding answers and the burden of maintaining credibility amid inevitable failures. The case became an emblematic example of how mysterious disappearances can challenge not only the capabilities of the police, but also the patience and hope of everyone involved. Stay with me until the end, because as we explore the impact of this case, you will feel how every detail, no matter how small, echoes through time, influencing lives and decisions to this day. Even decades later, the midnight disappearance remains relevant. Researchers, journalists, and curious individuals continue to revisit archives, analyzing old reports, and seeking to understand the reasons and circumstances that led to the unexplained loss. Each new reading, each new discovery in old police records rekindles the hope that one day the truth will be revealed. But at the same time, It keeps alive the frustration of never having concrete answers, of dealing with gaps that remain unexplained, as if the mystery had a will of its own and refused to be solved. It's precisely this blend of pain, impact, and mystery that makes the case so fascinating. It's not just a story of disappearance. It's a narrative of transformed lives, of a city shaken, and of an investigation that defies time. With each document revisited, with each testimony re-evaluated, we are reminded that some questions remain unanswered, and that the void left by a mysterious disappearance is felt far beyond the moment it occurs. Stay with me until the end, because as we continue exploring this case, you'll understand not only what happened that night, but also how the consequences of that disappearance reverberate to this day, keeping the mystery alive and unsettling. Have you ever wondered if the whole truth about a mysterious disappearance will ever be revealed? Imagine revisiting old police files, rereading forgotten reports, analyzing testimonies that have been archived for decades, and realizing that every detail, no matter how small, still holds secrets capable of completely transforming the story we think we know. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now may surprise you and make you question everything you believed about unsolved mysteries. The midnight disappearance continues to intrigue investigators, true crime scholars, and curious onlookers around the world. Decades later, revisiting every record, every old police report, and every forgotten note is essential to understanding what really happened that night. Experts in mysterious disappearances say that crucial clues were often overlooked or misinterpreted, and that only by analyzing the original documents can we gain a closer look at the truth. Some historical archives suggest connections that were never explored, suspects that were prematurely ruled out, and evidence that remains unexplained even by the most experienced investigators. As we ponder the details of the case, it becomes clear how important each layer of forgotten information is. Small contradictions in the accounts, inconsistent timings, and mentions of witnesses who were never interviewed indicate that the midnight disappearance was never a straightforward case. Each page revisited in old police files reveals new possibilities and forces us to question our initial conclusions. Have you ever been there, feeling the frustration of realizing that something that seemed clear hides much more than meets the eye? It's precisely this mix of curiosity and unease that keeps the mystery alive to this day. What makes the case even more intriguing is realizing that, even after so many decades, it remains relevant. Researchers, journalists, and true crime scholars continue to explore old archives, trying to understand the facts from new perspectives. Every detail revisited, every document carefully analyzed, may reveal something previously unnoticed, potentially altering the interpretation of the entire disappearance. Stay with me until the end, because at every turn, we discover that the mystery isn't just about the disappearance itself, but about how forgotten and neglected information can change the perception of an entire case. Throughout this process, important reflections emerge. How is it possible that such a shocking disappearance remains without concrete answers? Have all the files really been examined? Experts in investigating mysterious crimes emphasize that revisiting old files is one of the most powerful tools for understanding disappearances that seem insoluble. And it is precisely this exercise of analysis, of constant re-evaluation, that keeps the flame of the mystery burning, even when decades pass without new discoveries. As we delve back into the records, it's impossible not to feel the tension and curiosity surrounding every detail. Every note, every report, every old statement carries the possibility of revealing something new, of illuminating a point previously lost in the shadows of time. And it's precisely this relentless search for answers that connects us to the case, that makes us imagine scenarios, question theories, and attempt to reconstruct what really happened that midnight night. Will the truth ever come to light? This is the question that lingers in the air, guiding each new analysis and each revisited investigation. The midnight disappearance is not just a cold case. It's a constant reminder that unsolved mysteries require attention, patience, and the courage to confront every detail, no matter how obscure. Stay with me until the end, because as we continue exploring these historical archives and reflecting on each forgotten clue, you'll realize that, even amid decades of uncertainty, the mystery lives on, provoking curiosity, tension, and the relentless search for the truth. And as you reflect on all these details and try to imagine what that midnight night would have been like, I want to invite you to join me in this investigation. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what touched you most or what you think really happened. It could be a question, a theory, or even a similar experience you've had or heard about. Your voice helps build a community that shares curiosity, mystery, and learning. Each comment is a point of connection, an opportunity to exchange ideas and realize that we are not alone in the search for answers to such impactful stories. And if you're feeling drawn into this case, if the tension and mystery have made you curious to keep watching, like the video. This simple gesture shows that you want more content like this, which values in-depth investigations and stories of unsolved mysteries. Liking it is a way to strengthen the channel, to ensure that more people who are also interested in mysterious disappearances and true crimes can discover these stories and engage with them. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Subscribing to the channel means you won't miss any details of the investigations, any clues forgotten in old police files, or any developments that may emerge. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, keeping curiosity alive and encouraging the production of videos that explore fascinating and impactful cases like this one. Every subscription, every comment, and every like helps create a space where mysteries and true crime stories can be discussed with attention and depth, and where together we can go beyond the yellowed pages of old records. So as we continue to delve into this case that still holds so many secrets, I want you to feel part of this investigation. Imagine that each of your comments, each like, and each new subscription is like a small light illuminating parts of the mystery that remained hidden, helping to make sense of the story and keeping alive the debate about disappearances that have never been fully solved. Stay with me, because there is still much to discover, new clues to explore, and layers of mystery that will emerge as we advance this enigma. Have you ever imagined disappearing without a trace, precisely at midnight, when everything seems safe and familiar, and the world's routine remains indifferent to what just happened? Close your eyes for a moment and try to visualize silent streets, the light from street lamps reflecting on the wet or foggy asphalt, the wind whispering secrets that no one seems to hear. Your every step echoes, but suddenly you're gone. There are no traces, no signs, only the emptiness that remains behind, unsettling, as if time itself had stopped in that moment. This is the essence of the disappearance we'll explore today. A case that spans decades, defies experienced investigators, and remains shrouded in a mystery that seems to refuse to be solved. The midnight disappearance wasn't just an isolated event, but a turning point in an ordinary person's life. We're talking about someone with a peaceful routine, surrounded by family, friends, and everyday habits that seemed harmless and predictable. The normality of this life is what makes the case even more disturbing. Imagine the feeling of waking up every day without answers, realizing that the existence of someone you loved has abruptly vanished, without explanation, without sign, and that each attempt to understand what happened leads to more doubts and more questions. This impact is not just emotional, it's almost physical. Absence leaves an invisible mark that transforms the perception of everything around you. What happened that night remains unanswered to this day, and that's precisely what keeps the story alive, intriguing and layered. Early police records, old files and handwritten reports reveal details that seem trivial but carry a quiet tension. Conflicting timetables, witnesses with different recollections, evidence that disappeared or was recorded in confusing ways, All of this forms a web of information that challenges the logic and patience of any researcher. And it's here that the true complexity of the disappearance begins to emerge. It's not just about the person who vanished, but about the decisions made during the investigation, the silent impact of each choice, and how small, overlooked details can become keys to understanding a larger mystery. As we delve into the first hours of the disappearance, the feeling of tension mounts. Every street in the city, every corner, and every nearby house seems to hold fragments of a story no one has been able to fully tell. There's an almost tangible weight in the air, as if the setting, which once seemed ordinary and safe, has been transformed into a silent stage for events that elude comprehension. The victim, someone whose life seemed predictable and peaceful, becomes not just a physical absence, but a question mark that spans time, leaving families, friends, and investigators trapped in a search for answers that seem to always elude them. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, analyzing the invisible impact of disappearance. When a person disappears without explanation, the effect goes far beyond the initial frustration. It transforms the mindset of everyone involved. Family members who begin to question every decision, every visit to the police station, every small clue. Friends who try to reconstruct routines, noticing details that were previously insignificant. Investigators who must navigate old files, contradictory testimonies, and lost clues, trying to piece together a coherent narrative from fragments that don't always fit together. It's a true journey of patience, perception, and resilience, and there's something fascinating about observing how the mystery shapes every detail. Each revisited document, each old note, each re-evaluated testimony brings to light layers of truth that were hidden under the weight of time and oblivion. Discovering patterns, noticing flaws in the investigation, and imagining what could have been done differently is an exercise that connects us intimately to the case. Do you feel the tension and curiosity growing with each step of this reconstruction? It's as if each page of the old police files has a life of its own, whispering secrets that only those who observe closely can perceive. And in this deep dive, we begin to understand that the midnight disappearance is not just a record of an incident, but a narrative that spans generations, impacts lives, and challenges any notion of normalcy. The hidden truth, the feeling that something important was lost or overlooked, transforms each discovery into a new point of reflection. Every decision made at the time, every initial investigation, every small mistake, creates a domino effect that reverberates to this day, showing how the impact of a disappearance extends far beyond the moment it occurs. As we move forward, it's impossible not to feel empathy for what was left behind and, at the same time, an almost irresistible fascination for the enigma that remains. The midnight mystery forces us to reflect on choices, on perception, on the invisible weight of small actions that could have changed everything. Every detail we revisit, every observation of ancient records, brings us closer to understanding that this case is more than a disappearance. It is a journey through doubt, frustration, and the search for answers that continue to defy the logic and patience of all who dedicate themselves to understanding it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring not only what happened that night, but also the behind-the-scenes details, the decisions made, and the forgotten files that hold important revelations. There's something in old police records that many have overlooked, a detail that can completely alter our perception of the disappearance. Every line, every note, every small fragment of information holds a hidden truth that challenges us to think differently, to question our own conclusions, and to reflect on how life and events can change unexpectedly. As we continue investigating, the feeling that we're touching on something bigger grows. The Midnight Vanishing is more than a suspense or mystery story. It's a narrative that leads us to reflect on transformation, on decisions that shape destinies, and on the impact a single event can have on entire lives. By examining the files, the reports, and the forgotten clues, we begin to understand the complexity of the case, realizing that every detail carries weight, that every contradiction may hold the key to something yet to be revealed, and that every moment missed in the initial investigation creates ramifications that remain vivid to this day. Comment here, I'm on this journey too. Have you ever stopped to think how someone's routine can be completely transformed in an instant by something no one can predict? Imagine an ordinary night where the city prepares for bed. Streetlights illuminate quiet streets, and the sounds of everyday life mingle with the wind rustling through the trees. Everything seems normal, familiar, safe. But suddenly this normalcy is interrupted. A disappearance occurs at midnight, and with it, the life of a person, a family, and even an entire community changes irreversibly. This is the essence of the case we are exploring. A mystery that transcends time and that still raises questions and concerns today. Before that fateful night, the victim's life seemed ordinary, almost banal to outsiders, but full of details that reveal humanity, dreams, and relationships that were abruptly interrupted. There were simple routines, like drinking coffee at specific times, walking the neighborhood streets, talking to neighbors and family, and small activities that went unnoticed but shaped the daily life of someone who seemed perfectly integrated into their community. It is precisely this normality that makes the disappearance so impactful. Something so predictable and everyday is violently interrupted by absence, creating a void that no one can fill. Stay with me, because by understanding the context, you will realize how every seemingly trivial detail can take on enormous importance in the face of an unsolved mystery. The night of the disappearance is shrouded in an almost cinematic atmosphere, full of small elements that at first glance might go unnoticed, but which, when analyzed closely, help to reconstruct the events. The deserted streets, the distant sound of passing cars, the cold wind that seems to whisper something, all of this creates an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. The victim, someone who lived a structured and predictable life, becomes the center of an enigma that defies all logic. The sense of normalcy is crushed by the unknown, and it is precisely in this contrast that the emotional impact becomes more profound, connecting us with the pain of someone whose life was transformed without warning. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring not only the victim's routine, but also the behind-the-scenes context of the time, the mindset of the surrounding society, and the silent impact the disappearance had. Back then, decades ago, the perception of safety was different. Police worked with limited resources, relied on reports from neighbors and family members, and every decision they made could drastically alter the course of an investigation. The streets seemed safe, daily life followed a steady rhythm, and no one imagined that in just a few hours everything would change. The disappearance was not just a disruption of routine, but a complete transformation of the environment, perceptions, and emotions of everyone involved. Old records reveal details that help us understand this transformation. Family members' accounts describe the victim's habits, quirks, arrival and departure times, friendships, and commitments that seem trivial but become vital when we try to understand what happened that night. Each old police report contains clues that often go unnoticed, subtle details that, if analyzed correctly, can indicate patterns, reveal inconsistencies, or even suggest paths never explored. It's as if each page takes us back to the past, allowing us to experience the mood, routine, and atmosphere of the city on the night everything changed. The sense of emotional connection intensifies as we realize how the victim's abrupt absence affects everyone around them. Family members who were waiting for simple news, friends who were counting on everyday encounters, neighbors who observed a seemingly ordinary life. Everyone's perception of the world was transformed in a matter of hours. The disappearance is not just an isolated event. It creates a ripple that reverberates silently, altering how each person views their own safety, their decisions, and even their trust in the environment that once seemed safe. It is a profound psychological and emotional impact that shows how a single event can significantly transform entire lives. As we analyze the city and the contemporary setting, we realize that every detail of the victim's routine, every seemingly trivial habit, takes on new importance. Daily routes, arrival and departure times, household routines, all of these become valuable clues when seeking to understand the sequence of events that led to the disappearance. The city, which once seemed predictable, safe and stable, suddenly becomes a maze of possibilities and uncertainties, reflecting the frustration and desperation of everyone seeking answers. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how this interruption of routine and everyday life not only marked the beginning of the investigation, but also left a hidden truth, a sense that something much larger was at stake. Every decision made before and after the night of the disappearance shaped the course of the story, influenced the perceptions of witnesses and family members, and created an invisible impact that still resonates today in the yellowed pages of old police records. It is in this contrast between predictable life and abrupt absence that the first questions arise that have never been fully answered. As we continue to reflect on that night, the setting, and the victim's life before her disappearance, it becomes clear that every detail, every seemingly insignificant element, is part of a journey that blends curiosity, tension, and revelations. The city, routine, family, and police records intertwine in a narrative that defies logic, perception, and even our understanding of how everyday events can become profound mysteries. It is in this context that the story begins to come alive, revealing the silent impact of a disappearance that changed everything in a matter of hours. Comment. This makes sense to me. When the police received news of the disappearance at midnight, an investigation began that quickly proved complex and nuanced. Imagine the scene: old police stations, dusty archives, notebooks, recording the testimonies of witnesses still shaken by shock, and officers trying to piece together a coherent narrative from fragmented accounts. Each old police document, each registered report, contained minute details that at first glance might seem trivial, but which, upon closer inspection, could reveal subtle contradictions, time inconsistencies, and information that should never have been ignored. It is at this point that one realizes how the initial investigation, even conducted with authority and experience, suffered from limitations and human decisions that left significant gaps. The first suspects emerged naturally: people close to the victim, neighborhood acquaintances, neighbors who had daily contact with her. Investigators based their work on old statements, records of her habits, and small observations gathered in the first hours after her disappearance. But it soon became clear that not everything was as simple as it seemed. Contradictions began to appear in the accounts. One neighbor claimed to have seen the victim around a specific time, while another swore she was no longer on the street at that time. Official documents recorded activities that did not match what family members remembered. Each contradiction, each divergent detail, turned the investigation into a veritable puzzle, and those following the case today can sense, even from a distance, the tension and frustration that the first investigators faced. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because analyzing the initial investigation isn't just about revisiting old files, but also understanding how decisions made at that moment shaped the entire perception of the case. The police, however competent, were dealing with limited information, lacking modern technological resources, and under the pressure of an entire city watching their every move. Every choice, every person questioned, every lead considered or discarded had a direct impact on the direction the case took. And by examining official reports, transcribed interviews, and police records in detail, we can see how delicate and strategic the approach was. A small mistake could mean the loss of a vital clue, while a well-informed decision could open up entire avenues of investigation. One striking aspect of the archives is the amount of information that went unnoticed. Small details that today would be analyzed with technological precision were jotted down by hand in notebooks at the time, often lost among yellowed pages and hurried scribbles. There are records of witnesses who mentioned strange behavior by neighbors or strangers on the street that night. But these were not properly investigated, and others who told conflicting versions of the same event, increasing the difficulty of establishing a reliable timeline. It's fascinating to see, through these documents, how the mindset of the time, the available resources, and the pressure for immediate results shaped the investigative decisions, creating a narrative that still arouses curiosity and divergent theories today. Revisiting the police's first steps, it's also clear how important interviews with the victim's family and friends were. Grief and shock mingled with the need to provide information, and emotional accounts often conflicted with concrete data recorded in official files. This tension between emotion and evidence is central to understanding the complexity of the investigation. Every note, every official report, every police file holds not only clues about the disappearance, but also fragments of human experience. Fear, frustration, urgency, and hope all at once. What makes the case even more intriguing is realizing that, despite the authority and experience of the police, flaws and gaps in the initial records left the door open to different interpretations. Suspects were partially investigated, clues were lost, and some contradictory information was never clarified. When analyzing these files, it's impossible not to feel the tension of those who had to make quick decisions without having the full truth in front of them. Each choice shaped the narrative of the disappearance, and to this day, these initial decisions raise questions about what could have been done differently. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how each ancient record is not just documentary evidence, but also a piece of a story that unfolds in layers. The initial investigation allows us to understand the importance of every detail, the relevance of observing even seemingly insignificant elements, and how the absence of a clue can alter the entire trajectory of a case. When we read the reports, we see patterns of behavior, attempts to reconstruct the victim's routine, and trace the night when everything changed. It's like opening a portal to the behind the scenes of an investigation that still fascinates and provokes reflections on decisions, mindset, and impact. Each ancient record is also an invitation to analysis, an opportunity to question what was done, imagine what could have been done differently, and try to decipher the logic of an investigation that, although conducted with authority, is still far from having definitive answers. It is in this space between evidence, emotion, and research gaps that the mystery grows stronger, showing how disappearances can be complex, enigmatic, and profoundly transformative, not only for those researching, but for everyone involved and for outsiders. As we delve deeper into this context, we realize that each document, each police report, each old testimony is a window into a hidden truth that still lingers somewhere between the yellowed lines of the archives. It is in this process that we understand the true impact of the midnight disappearance, not just the physical absence, but the transformation of perceptions, the frustration in the face of gaps, and the tension that arises when the full truth always seems to elude us. Every detail of the initial investigation connects to layers of emotion, human decisions and revelations that even decades later continue to defy comprehension. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. When we begin exploring the old police files related to the midnight disappearance, we quickly realize there's much more to them than the superficial reports filed at the time. These documents, often forgotten on dusty shelves, contain details that escape the initial investigation and that shed new light on the case. There's a detail in the files that no one ever noticed, a seemingly trivial note that, when carefully analyzed, reveals strange patterns and behaviors of people who were never officially suspected. It's as if we're opening a door to a hidden world, full of layers and information that, if correctly interpreted, could completely alter our understanding of the night of the disappearance. The most striking thing is realizing how old records hold small clues that have become nearly invisible over time. Every handwritten line, every stamp on an official form, every observation made by an investigator carries fragments of information that could have been decisive. Suspects who were never properly questioned emerge from the background of these files, mentioned only in quick notes or minor comments that received no attention at the time. It is in this space between what was documented and what was investigated that the true complexity of the case lies. By revisiting this information, we begin to realize the magnitude of the gaps. Seemingly small decisions, such as discarding a statement or ignoring a seemingly unimportant clue, may have contributed to the mystery remaining unsolved to this day. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because every detail in the old files is not just a record, but a window into the hidden truth that the initial investigation failed to capture. It's fascinating to observe how the police, even with authority and experience, dealt with the technological and methodological limitations of the time. Yellowed photos, handwritten records, and audio tapes of interviews hold fragments of a puzzle that, to this day, defies logic. When we cross-reference this information with the accounts of family members and neighbors, we begin to realize that there are lines of investigation that were never explored, suspects who were not given due attention, and leads that, if followed, could have revealed something crucial. Among the files, we find mentions of nocturnal encounters with people connected to the victim's neighborhood, observations about strangers passing through the area, brief notes about cars parked at unusual times, and details about routines that the police themselves considered irrelevant. Each of these pieces of information taken alone might seem trivial, but together they paint a much more intriguing picture. The feeling we get when revisiting these records is that something important has always been there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally connect the dots. This is the essence of uncovering a hidden truth, realizing that what seemed insignificant actually holds transformative potential for the entire narrative of the disappearance. The emotional impact of revisiting these files cannot be underestimated. We find accounts that reveal the frustration of investigators, the urgency of family members, and the silent shock of the community, elements that don't appear in summaries or superficial reports. Each entry reveals an attempt to understand, control, and make sense of something that was, in essence, unpredictable and disturbing. This tension between what was known, what could be discovered, and what was ignored creates a unique atmosphere of mystery, which intensifies as we delve into the yellowed pages, searching for answers. As we examine these discoveries, we begin to realize that the initial investigation was only the surface of something much deeper. The old archives serve as a map of possibilities, each overlooked or misinterpreted detail opening the way for alternative hypotheses, revelations that challenge our understanding, and decisions that had silent and lasting consequences. It is a true journey through the complexity of disappearance, where each fragment of information offers an opportunity for transformation, a chance to reconstruct the narrative and connect dots that had remained scattered. And it's precisely this sense of gradual discovery that keeps us engaged in the story. Knowing that there's a hidden truth behind the scenes, waiting to be understood, transforms the act of revisiting the files into an almost tangible experience. With each page examined, we realize the impact of small decisions, the importance of seemingly insignificant observations, and the complexity of a case that defies logic and human perception. It's as if each detail carries its own energy, driving us to question, reflect, and imagine what could have happened on that fateful night. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how these hidden discoveries not only reveal new suspects or clues, but also change our perception of the investigation and the very nature of the disappearance. Each old record, each researcher's comment, and each forgotten note allows us to understand the impact of decisions made decades ago and how small actions or omissions can completely alter the narrative. The feeling of uncovering something that has gone unnoticed for so long is intense, and it makes us realize that the truth often lies hidden between the lines, waiting to be discovered by those who dedicate themselves to looking with attention, curiosity, and determination. Exploring these archives also connects us to the idea of transformation and journey, not just the victim's journey, but that of everyone involved in the investigation, the behind-the-scenes human decisions, the challenges of interpreting fragmented information, and the constant search for answers. Each revisited page invites reflection on how seemingly small or overlooked events can have profound repercussions, how the mindset of the time shaped each choice, and how the story of a midnight disappearance continues to reverberate, impacting not only those directly involved, but also everyone seeking to understand the mystery and the revelations it still holds. Comment: This makes sense to me. As we begin to delve into the theories and hypotheses surrounding the midnight disappearance, we realize that the line between what is plausible and what seems unlikely is extremely thin. The complexity of the case reveals itself precisely at this point. Investigators at the time worked with fragmented information, old records, and testimonies that often contradicted each other. Yet they still attempted to piece together a coherent narrative of what might have happened on that fateful night. Some believe that if certain steps had been followed more carefully, if certain clues had been explored in detail, perhaps the hidden truth could have been revealed much sooner, saving years of frustration, speculation, and emotional pain. And it is precisely this sense of what if that keeps the mystery alive, fueling curiosity and the need to understand each layer of this story. Theories range from accidents that could have happened discreetly, without witnesses, to the possibility of premeditated criminal involvement, precisely planned to leave no trace. Each hypothesis carries with it a series of evidence and contradictions, and analyzing each requires attention to the details of old files, the gaps in accounts, and the behavioral patterns of the people involved. Some researchers suggest that the victim could have accidentally gotten lost, perhaps drawn into an unexpected situation or traveling to an unfamiliar location without realizing the risk. Others argue that the urban structure itself, the quiet hours, and the lack of adequate lighting created a perfect opportunity for someone to act deliberately, exploiting every weak point in the victim's routine and the investigation. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic because understanding these hypotheses isn't just about listing possibilities. It's about trying to reconstruct the journey of events, decisions and impacts that shaped the case from the moment the victim's routine was disrupted. Each theory carries psychological, social, and even strategic implications. For example, by considering the involvement of third parties, it's possible to examine how certain attitudes, behavioral patterns, and choices made on the night of the disappearance could indicate intent, opportunity, or premeditation. On the other hand, by exploring the hypothesis of an accident or unintentional error, we begin to understand how external factors, such as weather conditions, lighting, city activity, or even momentary distractions, could transform a simple walk or journey into something unpredictable and irreversible. The emotional impact of pondering these hypotheses is profound. We begin to see the family's silent pain, the community's frustration, and the pressure on investigators, all mixed with the anxiety that accompanies the search for answers. Every possibility that emerges in the old files, every ignored or underestimated detail, becomes an invitation to reflect on the nature of truth and how small details can alter the perception of an entire event. The journey of analyzing hypotheses is not merely logical or investigative. It is deeply human, for it forces us to confront uncertainties, question judgments, and consider how seemingly trivial decisions shape the fate of entire lives and stories. The files show that, from the beginning, some hypotheses were explored more than others. Certain clues that today seem obvious were overlooked, potential suspects never received due attention, and testimonies that could indicate a pattern were treated with skepticism or recorded superficially. This leads us to reflect on the importance of the mindset adopted at the time. Decisions, available resources, and human limitations directly influence the course of the investigation, allowing the disappearance to remain without definitive answers for so long. It's fascinating to see how each hypothesis, even the most unlikely, connects with previous decisions, investigative choices, and individual interpretations of those involved. Furthermore, analyzing theories allows us to understand the impact of often overlooked external factors. Issues such as the community's social dynamics, interactions between neighbors, the victim's daily routines, and even details about the urban landscape become relevant in assessing the plausibility of each hypothesis. When we put all these elements side by side, we begin to see subtle patterns, coincidences, and inconsistencies that may indicate something deeper than a simple sequence of events. The truth, as is often the case, seems hidden between these layers, accessible only to those willing to analyze with attention, patience, and an open mind to the complexity of reality. Exploring these hypotheses also leads us to think about transformation and revelation. How each new line of investigation, each intersection of old data, each emerging detail can radically alter our understanding of the case. By revisiting the files with this perspective, we realize that each decision made, each investigative choice, each clue ignored or overlooked had far-reaching consequences, shaping not only the trajectory of the disappearance, but also the emotional, social and psychological impact it wrought over the years. It is in this space of questioning, analysis, and reflection that we begin to connect more deeply with the complexity of the mystery. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how the intersection of theories, hypotheses, and facts documented in old archives reveals not only possibilities, but also patterns of thought, strategic decisions, and invisible impacts that continue to influence perceptions of the case. Each line of investigation is an opportunity to discover something new, to better understand the journey of the victim, the investigators, and all those involved in some way in this mystery. It's an invitation to observe not only the facts, but also the background, the mindset of the time, and how hidden truth intertwines with human experience. Comment: this makes sense to me. The midnight disappearance was not just an isolated event. It left a profound mark that spanned generations, transforming lives and shaping the perception of an entire community. When the news spread, there was an immediate shock that wasn't limited to the victim's family. Neighbors, friends, and co-workers were all struck by a sense of unease and helplessness. Imagining someone disappearing without a trace provokes a kind of silent fear, one that infiltrates everyday conversations, making people pay closer attention to their streets, their habits, and their routines. It is in this psychological impact that we perceive the true magnitude of the event. It's not just the physical absence, but the invisible, almost tangible effect that spreads like a shadow over everyone involved. The victim's family faced a cycle of grief and uncertainty that is difficult to describe in words. Each day without news was a new emotional burden, a mixture of hope and despair that slowly eroded their sense of security and control. Every unanswered detail in the police records turned to frustration, and each new hypothesis emerged as a spark of hope that quickly faded due to the lack of concrete evidence. It's impossible not to feel empathy when analyzing the old files and noticing the tension of each family member, the desperation of each friend, and the ongoing struggle to cope with the lack of answers. There's an emotional impact that transcends the physical disappearance. It manifests itself in the transformation of daily life, in the anxiety that infiltrates decisions, and in the persistent feeling that something essential has been lost. With no chance of immediate recovery, beyond the impact on the family, the entire city was affected. Small and medium-sized communities, especially those with whom the victim had frequent contact, began to live under a cloud of suspicion and fear. Every shadow on the path, every nocturnal noise or unfamiliar figure could be interpreted as a sign of danger. This change in the urban environment, in people's behavior and in collective perception, is a direct consequence of the disappearance. The investigation, even conducted diligently, failed to fill these emotional gaps. Official documents, though thorough, failed to capture the psychological dimension of the impact, leaving room for rumors, assumptions, and theories that have consolidated over the years. The disappearance now exists both in the archives and in the city's collective memory, reinforcing its lasting effect. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding the impact of the case isn't limited to acknowledging the immediate pain and frustration. It's essential to understand how each investigative decision, each gap in the records, and each unexplored avenue contributed to the ongoing mystery and the prolonged suffering. As investigators analyzed clues and questioned suspects, each choice made had repercussions not only on the line of investigation, but also on how the community dealt with fear and uncertainty. Small omissions or errors, which may seem trivial in the records, turned into long-term consequences, creating a narrative of frustration and tension that perpetuated for decades. The impact goes beyond the case itself. It shaped the mindset of the people who lived in that context, influencing everyday decisions, social attitudes, and even the way new investigations were conducted in future situations. It's fascinating to realize that, even decades later, the disappearance remains relevant. New generations grow up knowing only fragments of the story, accounts from family members, and excerpts from old archives, yet they still feel the weight of the mystery. This continued relevance manifests itself not only in public curiosity, but also in the search for answers, the desire to revisit old archives, and the transformation of collective perceptions of safety, trust, and vulnerability. The case changed the city, the community, and the very way disappearances and investigations were handled, leaving a mark that extends far beyond the night it all happened. Every old record, every police report, every lost or ignored account contributes to the construction of a scenario that blends facts, emotions, and human interpretations. By studying the impact of a disappearance, we realize how seemingly small decisions had enormous consequences, shaping not only the investigation, but also the emotional and psychological lives of everyone involved. This perspective allows us to understand the true dimension of the case. It's not just about a missing person, but about how an event can reverberate over time, transforming realities, altering behaviors, and leaving a hidden truth that still fascinates and provokes questions. When we reflect on these consequences, we realize that the emotional and social impact is intertwined with the investigation itself. Every old document, every police officer's decision, every witness who wasn't properly considered, all contribute to the complexity of the mystery. The frustration of never knowing the full truth is compounded by the transformation of routines, mindsets, and interpersonal relationships. It's as if the disappearance has created a kind of invisible legacy, a psychological and social mark that shapes the way history is remembered, interpreted, and revisited. By analyzing the lasting impact of the case, we also begin to realize the importance of reflecting on decisions and mindset, on how each action or omission profoundly influences the outcome. Each choice made during the initial investigation had an impact that reverberates to this day, highlighting that understanding the disappearance goes far beyond seeking objective answers. It's about understanding how the hidden truth connects with human experience, collective perception, and the transformations that accompany the journey of everyone involved. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how these consequences and impacts show us that the disappearance is not just a story of mystery, but also a narrative of transformation, revelations, and human behind-the-scenes experiences that continue to influence generations. Every forgotten detail, every lost clue, every decision made based on incomplete information contributes to the complexity and richness of this story, keeping alive the enigma that changed everything since that midnight. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. When we look back at the entire journey thus far, we realize that the midnight disappearance is not just an isolated event, but a profound reflection of human complexities, of the decisions that shape destinies, and of hidden truths that often remain invisible even in the face of official archives and meticulous documents. Every detail we review, from the immediate impact on the family to the gaps in police reports, shows us how the reality of a crime or mystery is not limited to the surface of events. There is a layer of behind-the-scenes details, of strategic decisions, of choices and omissions that influence collective perception and the course of investigations. And this layer is often as revealing as the concrete facts. It's fascinating to see how even decades later, the truth still seems to dance on the edge of our understanding, waiting for someone to have the patience, curiosity, and sensitivity to connect the forgotten dots. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because revisiting these ancient mysteries forces us to reflect on the transformation that occurs not only in the investigation itself, but in each person involved and in the community itself. Every decision made by investigators, every witness interviewed, every suspect ignored or little explored, all of this creates a complex web of causes and consequences that continues over time. It's not just about analyzing clues or documents, it's about understanding the mindset of the time, the limits of human perception, the emotional impacts that propagate, and the silent repercussions that shape narratives. It's as if each old archive contains not only factual information, but also echoes of the fear, frustration, and hope that permeated those moments, revealing nuances that defy superficial interpretations. What makes this case even more intriguing is the sense of hidden truth that remains present in each revisited record. Specialized researchers, historians, and even forensic psychologists point out that, in unsolved mysteries, the key often lies not in spectacular evidence, but in the careful reading of details that at first glance may seem insignificant. It is in this intersection of facts, emotions, and human decisions that we begin to understand the depth of the midnight disappearance. There are patterns that slowly emerge, connections between events that seemed unrelated, and seemingly trivial decisions that generate far-reaching impacts, showing how the truth can lurk, waiting to be unveiled by attentive eyes and an open mind. As we delve into the aftermath, theories, and ancient records, we realize that the mystery isn't just about the missing victim. It also reflects on the nature of research, the construction of collective memory, and the lasting effects of human choices. Every old file we examine, every police report we review, and every witness account we analyze becomes a lens through which to understand not only what happened that night, but also how human beings cope with the unknown, with frustration, and with the silent pain of not having definitive answers. The complexity of the case teaches us that the investigative journey is not linear, and that the perception of truth is often shaped as much by human interpretation as by objective facts. By revisiting historical archives and delving behind the scenes of this investigation, we begin to realize that the importance of looking to the past goes beyond the simple desire to solve a mystery. Each document, each account, and each overlooked detail reveals silent transformations in the investigator's mindset, the city's social dynamics, the psychological impact on the family, and even the way the public absorbs stories of disappearances and unsolved crimes. This perspective allows us to understand that the truth is often multifaceted, hidden among human decisions, personal interpretations, and small coincidences that, together, form a larger narrative, one that remains intriguing and challenging even after so many years. The mystery remains precisely because these details are there, ready to be unraveled, but they require attention, patience, and courage to face the complexity of reality. Criminology experts and historical archive researchers emphasize that cases like this only become understandable when viewed through multiple lenses: factual analysis, psychological interpretation, and a critical reading of social and historical contexts. There is a wealth of revelations waiting to be uncovered, but it takes skill to connect disparate facts, observe subtle patterns, and recognize the impact of human decisions that often determine the course of an entire investigation. And it is precisely this intersection between facts, decisions, and consequences that keeps the story alive, transforming the disappearance into a narrative that transcends time. As we reflect on what happened, on the archives that still hold clues, and on the influence the case has on collective perception, we are faced with a question that remains unanswered. Will the truth ever come to light? The search is not just for justice or clarification, but also for understanding, for connecting human experiences and reconstructing, even if only partially, the impact and depth of a night that changed everything. Now, as we delve deeper into the background of this mystery, you begin to realize that every detail, every ancient record, and every reflection on past decisions leads us to understand not only the disappearance, but the very complexity of the truth and the human impact it generates. Comment: that makes sense to me, and if you've made it this far, it's a sign that this story truly captured your attention. And that's exactly what makes this work so special, sharing mysteries that make us reflect, imagine, and delve into stories that challenge our perception of reality. If this content resonated with you, your presence here is crucial, because it's what keeps this type of investigation alive and allows us to continue exploring fascinating cases together. So if you feel this narrative added value or sparked some curiosity, leave a simple comment like "I'm with you until the end" in the comments. It's a way to show that you've been part of this journey from the beginning. And while you're typing, if you feel this experience was worthwhile, give the video a like. It's not just a click, but a gesture of connection, showing that we're together in this exploration of mysteries, revelations, and stories that stir our minds and emotions. Each like helps strengthen this community, and it's incredible to see how each person who gets involved here contributes to keeping the search for knowledge and hidden discoveries alive. If you'd like to continue this immersion, there's a video right here that complements this topic, providing more details, behind-the-scenes footage, and new perspectives on cases that defy logic and perception. Click there and stay with me, because the journey doesn't end here. It simply transforms, and each step we take together brings us closer to new discoveries and reflections that go far beyond what we imagine.